So I just got done watching Dark Voyage, and am I a bad person for laughing at the blind jokes in this episode? Also known as, yes, you're a bad person for laughing at the blind jokes in this episode. This focuses on a Predacon ambush that has left most of the Maximals blind and far away from the base, and suffering from an energon, essentially a saturation of energon that is corrupting their system. They have a limited amount of time to actually make it back close enough to get rescued. This is where Rhinox gets the term Zen Rhino, because this is him leading the way back home, and this is where we get a little bit more of his spiritual side that we first saw in the Spark. Now, before we get into the breakdown of the episode, we're going to make note here that this feels like it was done much earlier in the series than where it is slotted. I am using the official production order of the episodes, but there's a lot going on here that doesn't really make sense. At the end of the episode, they're going to mention that we never really got to find out what our beast modes were capable of, and now we know, even though we just did Call of the Wild, where we found out exactly what their beast modes could do. There's also a lot of mentions of the Inferno as a profanity, and no sight or mention of the brand new Predacon Inferno. We also have only a passing mention of Air Razor, which would put this somewhere after the Spark or before Spider's game. So before or after the Trigger. The trick to that is it feels like it comes from even earlier in the season than that. It almost feels like an episode that was finished in production later, so a line got added in to include Air Razor in canonically, even though she wasn't actually present. It feels like a patch job to make it feel like it belonged later in the season, though a lot more of what happens in the episode gives a lie to that. So I'm mentioning that just because just to get a weirdness out of the way. So this starts with what is the biggest explosion we have seen since the second episode. It's an entire vein of energon just blew up with 4 Maximals right at the epicenter of it going off. And aside from their eyes and internals and some of their internal diagnostics not working, they seem fine. No one lost any parts. No one is lacking function. They're glitchy, but they can still transform, they can still fight, they can still talk, they can still move. They are somewhat weak, but for the most part, for how close to the energon they were when the explosion went off, it feels like they took next to no damage that they should have. Also, for some reason, just before the explosion went off, everyone transformed into robot mode. If you're anticipating a big blast of energon energy, why would you transform out of your protective mode? I don't know. It seems like a convenience of writing. They needed them to transform to beast mode to get across. Oh, well, yeah, we can't see. So they had them transform before the explosion, even though it made zero sense and seems like it would have been like the perfect thing to do if you wanted to get blown up by this blast. So yeah, that's one of the things that kind of took me out of it a little bit. There's a few things that took me out of this, honestly. Later on, they're going to fall down a waterfall, which is painted as this really dangerous, suspenseful thing if they had fallen, and then when they fell again, nothing really happened to them. They just kind of washed up on the bank of the river below. That's it. They didn't seem like they were any worse off than they were before, outside of just being more exhausted. Speaking of, Rhinox took a big breath of air on his way out of the water when that happened, which, again, robots. Feels weird. Now, is it an exhaust system? Is it like a cooling system like a PC has, where they have to take in air and take out hot air? I'm spitballing here, because otherwise, kind of silly. More and more, I'm noticing that there's a lot of traits to these characters that make it seem like they're a bit more organic than they seem, which would kind of defeat the point of beast machines if that was true. So I'm largely, based on the fact that they get blown up and cut in half, still presuming that they are almost all robotic, but for some reason do have some elements of natural functions, which is just weird. Also, we have a timer in this one. They mentioned that in 60 cycles, the corruption is going to spread completely, and basically they're going to end up fried. That's okay. So we need that for the tension of the episode, and that does mean that's why they're staying in beast mode the whole time, because it's slowing the corruption down. But that does make the rescue a little bit weird. Primal's the one who flies in, and Tigertron's not far off. But this is Rat Trap, Rhinox, Dinobot, and Cheetor that are all out of commission here and in stasis lock. So you've got Primal, who we've acknowledged can only carry Rat Trap in the air. Maybe if they call in Air Razor, she'll be a little bit more efficient at it, because she is built to be a flyer. Tigertron, okay. Tigertron's got some strength to him. Maybe he can heft back Cheetor or Dinobot. Dinobot's a stretch, because Dinobot's a big guy too. But Rhinox is huge. I don't know how they get Rhinox back when there's only 3 of them. And then you account for the fact that we've only seen 2 CR chambers in the whole series so far. So how did they get all of them repaired before the Energon corruption fried them completely? They might have other chambers that aren't in the main base area, the master control room, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe there's some elsewhere on the ship. I'm giving that one a pass, but it's just one of those weird things. Still have no idea how they got them all back in time. So there's a lot of weirdness to all of this. There's a lot of weird things that don't quite connect in how everything operates. Now, there's a few weird things. There's a few commendable things here. I will give it that. The voice acting in this episode is top notch. I genuinely believe that Cheetor is on the verge of death. I genuinely believe the panic and fear that's going on through Dinobot, and it makes sense that the warrior would have the most fear going on, given how important sight is going to be to someone who is so combat driven. And Primal's desperation and fear when he finds them in that condition, absolutely believable. So the voice acting, perfect, spot on. And I wouldn't expect anything less of this cast, but they were directed to an extremely strong performance here that really set the tone. Also, one of my favorite scenes here is when they are trying to fight this gigantic snake blind that has wrapped Cheetor, and at the time, it was entirely unrealistic because this snake was gigantic. But 10 years after Beast Wars, they actually did discover a fossil of a snake that would actually be the right size. So, strangely prophetic. You're a little bit of trivia for it. Also, keep in mind everything that the Maximals have gone through here. They were ground zero for a massive energon explosion. They fell down. They fell down they fell down off of a waterfall and washed up on shore. They were still able to fight off Pterosaur and Waspinator. And Pterosaur and Waspinator went down with 2 shots. And I should say that 1 shot each, they went down. There's just a ton of plot armor going on here. The Maximals seem like they should have been dead 10 times over, and the Predacons come off as fragile as glass, and I hate that. I really don't like just... Adversity and overcoming it is one thing, but when it's so much going on, and it's just not... It takes me out of it that they went through so much and took so much damage, and yet the ones that are threatening them go down like they're nothing. And we've seen Waspinator have fairly decent fights with Primal even, and that's not even in old episodes. That was kind of recently. But here he gets clowned. Okay, so I do have a lot of problems with this episode. I know a lot of people like it. Ultimately, it's an okay episode. Unfortunately, I'm labeling it as a skippable episode. There's nothing going on in the overarching plot, aside from some time to see Rhinox back at his spiritual best. I'm not a fan of the blind jokes. I'm not a fan of the plot armor. It just feels like there's way too much going on here that makes me go, oh, come on, really? For me to turn that part of my brain off and just enjoy the episode for what it is. I mean, the Beast Wars writers are better than this. And this I feel like was a weak outing for them. All right, so that is going to do it for me and Dark Voyage. We've got some really, really important episodes coming up next. So I'm actually really looking forward to talking about those, and I'm really looking forward to your reactions. So I will hope to see you then. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.